each time I watch these episodes, whether they're serious or not, this episode is something that can easily happen in real life, even with the whole misunderstanding that we've seen from so many times in other shows. But what makes this episode a lot more entertaining is the fact that Grizz is actually dealing with a midlife crisis that he might be considered food or worse. Grizz has been binge watching the show while happy times, like in happy neighborhoods, crime still happening during those neighborhoods, and the people who are dealing with the situations just cannot take the stress of bad stuff happening out of nowhere. And this is mostly irony because this is where Grizz gets himself into the situation. Same goes to Panda and Ice Bear. They saw an RV parked by the house, being owned by Frey and Warren. They moved into the woods in the time being in order to enjoy themselves into the wilderness, and they were surprised to see 3 bears. But let's just say they're way too into bears to the point that Grizz becomes suspicious. Just when he's about to give them his gratitude, he's been eavesdropping on the fact that they're about to kill him. Like, literally kill him from the way that Warren is using his knives. Which really makes Grizz completely paranoid. As the episode continues, Grizz becomes a lot more suspicious from the way Warren and Flay are studying him and the way he looks. And let me tell you, if Grizz was a bear that actually exists in the real world, and as in character, he would instantly run away. Granted, bears usually do that in order to protect their cubs, but considering that they're mostly meat-eating bears and very furious and vicious, it is easily to see that that they can have a chance against any of the hunters. But since this is We Bear Bears, these bears aren't really vicious whatsoever. And I've said bears because Panda and Ice Bear didn't agree with Grizz at first when it comes to inviting the neighbors into the house. But when they saw them during the nighttime, they saw Warren using his axe to cut off a stump of a tree with Grizz's face on it. Oh my god. I can guarantee you that Panda and Ice Bear are much more forgiving brothers the more they completely see all this stuff happening. Because if this entire episode was mainly about them hanging out with the neighbors until they figure out the truth at the end, this episode would have been a lot more predictable than anything. They need to do some investigation and prove in order to show to the police that the neighbors living by the house are considered bear killers. But considering that Ice Bear actually sees the pictures on the walls inside of the RV, they got the proof of what they need to expose. Jeez. Just looking at this image right now, it's really terrifying. And to think that Ice Bear and Panda are actually into this whole killing situation, it's honestly a lot more astounding that Warren and Flay are literally one of the only characters who aren't friends actually came to the bears in order to get what they want. This episode becomes a lot more interesting and way more underrated for how these characters are executed, because like I said, these 3 characters are still bears and they're still fitting in San Francisco. And then when they meet neighbors who aren't like the people from San Francisco or their friends, it actually shows that this show has some kind of realism when it comes to the animals and humans meeting each other, when it comes to different human types. Human types as in what they're mostly into and the fact that they're mostly hunters. Granted, you can say that Grizz's neighbors aren't really hunters because they never use a gun whatsoever, but for how they're mostly are portrayed, it's a lot more understanding for what the motivations are, even if it's mostly a whole misunderstanding. So for Grizz and his brothers gain some information in order to show to the police about what they're doing, it really shows how much they're just trying to protect themselves, since that Gwiz actually watched an entire series involving good families getting into criminal situations because of a selfish criminal completely ruining their lives. And that really makes this episode a lot more good if you actually watch those documentary shows involving families completely getting robbed or getting harmed by criminals. But after they escape through the bathroom window, which caused the wall to be damaged from the RV, we actually get to see the true colors of Warren and Flay. They're actually carviners. So apparently all the pictures that they took from the bears, along with other knives, were all just a misunderstanding. Usually this would have been the issue, but for how this episode is executed, this reveal isn't really all that bad. When it comes to misunderstandings in other shows, they usually do it in the most stupidest and way more frustrating way. But all I can say is that for what this episode has to offer, is that it's not afraid whether they do misunderstandings like this. And to make up for damaging the RV for the most, they had to stand still so that Warren can do the carving of the bears making statues. And let's just say, he along with his wife aren't even close to being finished. I don't know if it's just because of the directions that these episodes takes that makes these a lot more entertaining, or it's the fact that these shows just aren't really as advertised as much when it comes to other cartoons and Cartoon Network. Either way, I guess it really shows that not every cartoon needs to be a lot more attention related in order to have so many episodes being viewed by so many people. I really think of what these episodes mostly do when it comes to simple title cards. They still make the plots a lot more entertaining while also very realistic, to the point that even cartoons like these can be a lot more realistic and mostly relatable. Granted, this episode isn't really relatable since that these are bears we're talking about, but since that Gwiz was binge watching a crime show involving families getting into some serious depression, it's something that we can easily relate to. As we continue on with this month, we're getting to one of the major projects, and those projects is a top 10 video that is going to be coming next week. I give this episode a 7.25 out of 10.
Let's get this started again. Me and my whole